Okay, then there are quantitative labels. These are labels which don't just tell you better or worse, they actually give you the numbers. So this is a carbon label on the right, which is from a bag of chips in the UK by a company called Walker. And it tells you how many grams of CO2 are embodied in the production and distribution of this bag of chips. Or on the left, an earlier label from Timberland, the shoe manufacturer, showing some of the stats about this particular set of shoes that this was printed on the package of. And it includes the number of kilowatt hours of energy that it took to produce it. Now this particular label I wish had a bit more detail in it. It's pretty much just showing you the energy, showing you the percentage of renewable energy, 5%, which is nice. Hours served in our communities is kind of a vague number, and percent of factories assessed against a code of conduct is also pretty vague. You know, it's nice that they were assessed. How did they score? And child labor, 0%, that's good. And it tells you the manufacturing locations, so that if you wanted to figure out the transportation impacts, you could. But a label that's similar, that does a better job, is this one that was on the back of a calendar that I saw a couple years ago. And it tells you a bunch of numbers here. It tells you the number of trees saved, the amount of water saved, the amount of energy saved, solid waste saved, and greenhouse gases saved by them using recycled material instead of virgin paper. Now, this is still not quite what you want, because the numbers here are for their entire printing operation in this year, so it's not really telling you how much of that is due to this particular calendar that you've bought, because you have no idea whether they printed 10 calendars this year or 10 million calendars. There are advantages to both quantitative and contextual rating systems. The absolute systems, the one that tells you the number, those systems are very credible and more objective, hopefully, because they give you an actual number rather than just giving you a score of 1 to 10, which could mean anything. And they're, in principle, measurable by anybody. So not only does that make it more objective, but it means that you could outsource the work, and it allows more third-party verification. Whereas with the relative score, the advantage is that you can compare by product category. You know, 75 grams of carbon might be good for a package of potato chips. It might be terrible. How many of us really know? And again, these benchmarks, because they're relative to a particular category, they can move over time. So a score that was good 5 years ago might be terrible today. And then, so finally, another possibility is to combine these two so that you can have the advantages of both. You can educate consumers on the absolute scores and give them useful relative impacts so that they can compare between products. This is a label that I put together a few years ago, just theoretically, for the World Changing book, and it has a combination of absolute and relative scores, where all the stuff in text that looks like a nutrition label is all absolute numbers, and then the graphic on the top is relative scores in 5 different categories of energy, water, social responsibility, toxins, and resources, and then you get a single overall score in the bronze, silver, or gold in the center. The closest thing that exists to that in the real world may be this energy guide label from the US EPA. And this has been appearing for years and years now on what's called white goods, so like dishwashers or refrigerators, washing machines, home appliances, basically. And it gives you both the absolute and the relative score by giving you a bar where it shows the worst performer on the right-hand side, where it says uses most energy, and the best performer on the left, where it says uses least energy. And then on the top, you see that upside-down triangle that says this model uses such and such. So you can see that this particular model is pretty bad. It's not quite the worst in its category, but it's certainly not good. But if you were comparing several different appliances that had wildly different price points and wildly different energy uses, you might say, oh, even the worst one in this category is still only whatever 50 kilowatt hours per year rather than 700 kilowatt hours per year. So it doesn't matter that much here. I'll save my money here, and I'll spend extra on the efficiency of this device that might use 700 kilowatt hours per year where it matters more. This is another combination label. This is called the Pharos Label by Tom Lent at Healthy Building Network, and it is kind of putting a life cycle assessment in a graph. It's a great graphic, and it has been getting some uptake in the green building industry for building materials. It's not really oriented towards consumer products, but you never know, maybe in another decade. So there are actually quality control standards for environmental labels, and this is ISO 14020 by the International Standards Organization. They call out 3 different kinds of labels and have different rules for each one. Type 1 is a multi-attribute label developed by a third party, so this is something like the LEED rating system or EPEAT or Cradle to Cradle, where the company that came up with the rating system is not the company whose products are being rated, and it's testing multiple different attributes. And then type 2 is a single attribute label developed by the producer. So let's say if I were a seafood company and I came up with a label that said dolphin safe, that would be a single attribute, and I would be rating my own products. And then type 3 is an eco-label based on a full life cycle assessment that would be more like the Pharos rating system or the SCS label that we saw as well. Okay, so there are tons of eco-labels on the market right now, but ideally having someone come up with a good, fairly universal, and I would say life cycle assessment based label will hopefully be able to replace many of the hundreds and hundreds of labels that we have, so that we just have a handful that are few enough that people recognize them and understand what their value is and what they mean. And I think that eco-labels are potentially a very powerful tool for sustainability in the product world, because right now customers cannot make informed decisions. Even eco-savvy people, when you're shopping at the store, can't choose between a good and a bad product because we don't have the information. It's like having nutrition labels on food. Not that many people actually read them, but for the people that do, it helps them make informed decisions. And enough people do it, even though it's a small percentage of the market, enough people do it that those decisions can drive markets. You know, we've seen them drive markets towards low sodium foods, low sugar foods, fat-free foods, etc. And so even if only a tiny percentage of the market cares about sustainable products, I would argue that giving that fraction the information that they need to make the decisions at the point of purchase will help move markets and will help enable consumers to become instrumental in green design. So that's it for Laws and Labels. Thank you very much.